1 week away, National Signing Day. Nebraska continues to add to this roster. They're pushing 37 players right now, scholarship players added to the football team. Very good chance they can get to 38 here by signing day, if not more. I think we all had an idea of what this was going to look like under Matt Rhule in terms of just the players that he was going to add to this team. But it's been even greater. I mean, you look at the numbers today, they're at 26 commits and then 11 transfers today. That's 37 players. A year ago, they were at 34. That was the record at Nebraska. Bill Callahan's transition class year of 2005 was 32.
Okay.
And that was back in the days of the 25 cap, and you had to do the count backs and whatnot to get to that number. So
annual cap.
The annual cap, but you could count back. So if you had 7 you didn't use the year before, you could count them next year. So for Callahan to get 32 in that era was unheard of. But now here we are at 37, probably going to need a 38 with Sua Lafatu, who's going to make his announcement on signing day. He announced, Brian Munson and him talked on Tuesday night. He'll announce next week on Wednesday. That would be 38 guys added to this football team, Steve Sipple.
38 guys. I have not honestly pondered the big picture too much because you're so wrapped up in the kind of the guy by guy he committed. I think as the days go on, I'll look at it more in a big picture sense. It is striking the amount of work they're doing. It's striking to me. It's striking to me something you said, Sean. By the way, great numbers for context. I mean, that was really important. Something you said, I heard you on the radio this week say, of the incoming freshmen, probably only a couple look like contributors. So it's odd. We always talk about this roster flip. I don't see this as a roster flip. There's too many guys.
It's a long-term play.
It's a long-term play. Yeah, long-term play.
Laying the foundation. Yeah. And Sean, I don't know if you've been asked yet today, but how are they going to get down to 85? I just want to make sure that you had to answer that.
What happens if they don't?
Okay,
there's not even an NCAA anymore. Is there?
On the YouTube screen, we need to have like a little Roman numeral thing that just tracks the times that we talk about getting to 85. That's number one on the side there.
There's this sort of built-in part of the discussion that Nebraska would be in big trouble if they did. I guess the NCAAs.
You know how they get down to 85? They call up 1890 and Tom Peed and say, "Hey, we got a few guys that we got to put on
a few extra scholarships."
But honestly, that's maybe one way.
Guys, that's what they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trent Hickson was a walk-on last year. Brody Belt was a walk-on. Wyatt Lever was a walk-on. Colton Feast was a walk-on. Wow. The long snappers. They put those guys all on walk-on situations, down the road in the program. So NIL has changed this. The thing is, they're not going to be very public about that. They're not going to say, and the way we got down to 85 is thanks to our great collective. They're not going to do that. But that's
part of it.
That's part of it. It's a strategy you have to utilize.
Some guys will just matriculate after spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There might be an injury.
There's a whole nother round of attrition coming. Yeah. I mean, that's how it always happens. There's the right after the season, there's right after spring ball, and then there's right before fall camp where you get more roster movement. It always figures itself out. So I just tongue in cheek asked you that. But what I do want to discuss is with all these additions, wide receiver has now taken the cake as the most surprising development, in my opinion, just with the sheer numbers that they've added to that room. Obviously most recently getting Demetrius Bell, but I mean, just that the work that they've done at that position group, which is the irony here is how much fretting was going on with McGuire taking over as receivers coach. And now all of a sudden that looks like maybe one of the deepest units on the entire team. What do you guys think about the additions and where do they go forward from here?
I just want you to chew on this, Steve Sipple. They're at 16 wide receivers on scholarship right now. That's more scholarship players than John Cook has on his volleyball team, than Amy Williams has on her basketball team, than Rhonda Revelle has on her softball team, than Will Bolt has on his baseball team. They got 16 wide receivers on scholarship. Think about that.
That's wild.
Well, I mean, and they'll probably play 9, 10. It makes some sense. There are a lot of young guys in there. I mean, how many of those is it? 6 incoming freshmen? Is that the number?
6 freshmen.
Yeah, 6 incoming freshmen. So not all
transfers. 2 guys coming back from the portal.
Yeah. I mean, the question is who's number 1? I mean, who's your clear? I don't know. I don't know that you can say who their clear cut number one is.
My money's on Billy Kemp today.
I think of that as an unconventional number one, and that he's 5'9", 172. And now I will say this: Virginia didn't just play him in the slot; they played him all over.
Yeah,
I mean, they lined him up in the backfield. I don't know. You guys we all think about football in different ways. And when I think of a number one, I think of a 6'3",
Kenny Bell,
210-pounder, 195-pounder. I think of Xavier Betts. Ideally, Betts would say, okay, this is it now. I'm making a push for the NFL. And Betts would become your number one. That's what the idea.
I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself, though, not knowing the mental and the physical shape that he's going to be in.
I understand where you're
Marcus Washington's going to be in that discussion as well.
Right. He's not. I mean, he's good. I like him. He had 31 catches. He had 31 catches last year. He's a number two in my mind, though.
Okay.
I mean, Palmer's number one. Palmer's a number one. Samori Toure's a number one. I don't know if Washington would get you the kind of numbers that you would need to classify him as number one. Maybe. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him because he's tough. Doesn't drop anything. And
it's hard to be number one.
We'll go over middle. But, I think when he just doesn't fit the prototype number one. Neither does Kemp. But somebody's got to be.
Any of them? I mean,
somebody's – somebody's got to be number one, though. You're right. I just wish it was Betts.
Billy Kemp, though, has the reception numbers and the targets of a number one in his career.
Yeah.
You got to admit that.
Oh, I know. He's interesting. I watched his film. He's interesting. They use him in a lot of ways. You don't often see him just run a go route, though, and catch the ball over a 6'2" corner. You don't see that all that often. But you see him used in a variety of ways. I mean, and they will, they'll throw it over the middle of the field to him when they need a first down. They'll throw those little flare out screens and make him beat one guy and get upfield. He's good catch. He's a good catch and run guy. So he's going to catch a lot of passes. There's no doubt about that.
This week, Nebraska, though, going on the subject of new roster additions, there were 4 of them. Art Gilbert, obviously late last week, but this week, Ishmael Smith-Flores, the tight end out of Arlington Martin, his teammate, Jeremiah Charles out of Arlington Martin, Jacob Hood, the third Georgia Bulldog, transferring to Nebraska, big 6'8" tackle, then Demetrius Bell, a Nashville wide receiver. All 4 of those are the latest additions. How about the Corn Dogs? Remember Mark Richt when his family was in Bellevue and they had the nickname for being Georgia Bulldogs in Nebraska? They called themselves the Corn Dogs. And the Corn Dogs are back.
They're already selling shirts. You can buy a Corn Dog shirt.
Yeah, all those guys are.
Where's your shirt, Rob?
I didn't wear mine today.
Are intriguing in their own way. Jacob Hood, I've seen some people kind of pencil him as the starting left tackle. That's a big development. He's only played one season of college football. He never played. He redshirted. His next snap in a college game will be his first one. His size is alluring. I mean, he's a project, I think.
Is that his playing weight, you think?
360.
Yeah, I'm saying, is that? I mean, does he have work to do?
I don't know. Just what I've seen.
Is this basically Jalen Weaver again?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, it's hard to play at that weight and move.
You're right. I think he probably 340. His body looks pretty good. I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily look at him as a transfer that's got to come in and play right away. I know that's what you do, but he's a young guy. He's a young transfer. The other ones they're fascinating. The tight end from Georgia's obviously, man. I mean, watch him. He's awesomely talented. He was the highest ranked tight end since the ratings began, right? And then the pass rusher. The critical thing with him will be as he regained all of his explosion from a knee injury suffered in high school. That's what like scouts wonder. That's what those coaches down south wonder. Is he going to ever regain that explosiveness?
You're listening here to the Husker Online show as we make our way through opening headlines. Matt Rhule is everywhere. I was just on my regular personal Facebook feed, and just people I know in Omaha had pictures of him everywhere. He was at Brother Sebastian's restaurant.
Really?
He was in all these different Omaha high schools, including my alma mater, Omaha Gross, go Cougars, Bellevue East, Bellevue West, Papillion, La Vista South. Over there? Wow. Like my uncle's nephew, his wife's a principal or assistant principal at Papillion South, and Matt Rhule retweeted a picture with Jessica Prussia, my Uncle Dan's nephew's wife, at Papillion South. And then he was at Stella's Hamburgers. Remember, I took you to Stella's.
Yeah, Stella's good. What's Brother Sebastian?
It's a steak. It's an old school Omaha steakhouse.
Where's that at?
It's off of Pacific Street, I believe,
and
in West Omaha.
Oh, West Omaha.
Yeah. Gary Saddlemeyer had been like a long time spokesman for them over the years. He was kind of always done their commercials, but he was in there for a lunch on Monday. He was hitting slap shots at Baxter Arena with Trev Alberts.
Sounds like he's got a fun job to me.
I mean, right now he is in the full kind of wedding reception stage of the job.
What do you think about not just Rhule, but the staff and the efforts that they've made in literally going to what seems like every high school in the state, every small town in the state, with all these things that they need to do on the recruiting front, the transfer portal, all that sort of stuff, that they're devoting this much time, effort, resources to getting out and making their presence in the state, putting stickers on high school walls and taking pictures with coaches, with athletic directors, going to small town restaurants, like basically ingraining themselves in the state. I mean, obviously that was a priority for them, but is it surprising just how much of an effort they've made in that regard?
Well, Trev said last night, Trev Alberts on the AD on radio, statewide radio, that the staff's work ethic has surpassed his expectations. I don't take it for granted. And if I were a Nebraska fan, I wouldn't take it for granted. I think they're just working incredible hours. And as you said earlier, Rob, and it kind of goes along with laying a foundation. That's what they're doing in a sense. I mean, you're building those relationships right off the bat. I like it. I mean, it's a very good look.
What it shows me, I mean, because people ask, like, why didn't Frost go out to this level? You know, he kind of did, but he didn't want to be seen in public. He didn't want to take a lot of pictures with people and do some of the things that you're seeing, like, you know, Ed Foley's doing on Twitter. His personality was different. Bo Pelini's personality was different. Mike Riley,
he liked doing that stuff.
But just didn't go at that level. I mean, the satellite camp tour that Mike Riley went on was intense because I went on every one of those trips. Like I was gone for 9 straight days.
Yeah, Riley was good about getting out.
Yeah, I mean, he was
comfortable.
He did a lot of that too. But this is just common sense, like understanding.
It is, but it's complicated. I think it's complicated by personality. It begs a question I would ask you guys. If you're an AD, now I will tell you, I'll just put it this way. If I were a Nebraska AD, because of the nature of this job, I would lean toward hiring guys that are comfortable in public. And if you're not, and that's clear, it can't be the only determining factor, but it would be a factor.
You can't hide here.
I mean,
you're the most high profile person in the state. And like, if you're uncomfortable being recognized and people want to talk to you and take pictures, maybe this isn't the job for you.
That's right.
Go coach at some.
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, when Pelini, he looked at the Miami job. You guys remember that when he looked at the Miami job, and a lot of the appeal was, I can go to Miami and not be recognized.
I mean, that's what Frost loved about UCF. He'd go to the store, no one had any idea who he was. Like he was just a regular guy in Orlando.
Right. In defense of Frost, I mean, I remember talking to him about it before he took the job. That was one of his big concerns was, I don't really feel comfortable in all that limelight.
And it ended up being kind of a detriment to him in the end.
Yeah,
it did.
It did. Now,
because as the pressure grew, he got more isolated.
And that's the question as an AD you have to wrestle with. Is it a detriment at Nebraska?
I think it is.
Yeah, I believe it is too.
Because it's that important.
Right.
So what do you do?
There's some places where you can be an introvert head coach and be pretty fine.
You can't do it here.
You got to take it on. And I think having Ed Foley out there in person has been big. And I was with one of my friends who used to be a Bellevue West coach. He's now a middle school administrator in Bellevue. And he said, Foley's the perfect guy
really
to have out doing this because he's older. He's been around the block. Like you can tell he genuinely enjoys going to these places. Like, and I'm not going to name names, but like a younger coach, if you're like a 28 or 32-year-old assistant, you probably aren't going to appreciate it maybe to the level like a guy like Foley is. So I think Foley is probably the perfect guy to have out in this role
because he's focused on a state.
Yeah, and you worry about Nebraska. You're a special teams coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you worry about Nebraska. This is perfect for you, and then everybody else will come in around you.
Well, one reason is because you can load your special teams with walk-ons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those guys that run down on kickoff coverage. I mean, you can have 28 walk-ons ready to roll. You can be 5 deep. You know, that's important.